The massive influx of fentanyl into the United States has left no community untouched. The day after Christmas, law enforcement in the state of Alabama seized enough fentanyl from 2 individuals in North Alabama to kill every single person in our state's largest 2 cities. And you start to think about that and think about the impact of that just in one seizure. We've heard many stats today. Over 379 million doses of fentanyl were seized across America in 2022, enough to kill every single American or every single Alabamian 75 times over. The results of this poison, it's flooding our country, and we see what's happening. It's clear. There were more than 100,000 overdoses, 112,000 to be exact, in 2023, and fentanyl is now the leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45. I think it's critically important that we think about this crisis beyond simple statistics, though. These numbers represent real people. They represent pain. They represent tragedy. They represent loss. They all have faces and stories that are touching every corner of our society. Mr. DeFord, congratulations on your tremendous success. We appreciate you being here today and you sharing your personal story. I want to say, your story is one of salvation, and I am so grateful for your willingness. I think a lot of times people in life just share their peaks. That's all they want you to see. And your willingness to show valleys, and then to show and talk about your relationship with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, to talk about climbing out of those valleys, that is going to give somebody else the courage to climb too. And so thank you. Please keep telling your story, and thank you for your willingness to do it here in such a public way today. As we sit here, though, not every family has a story of success like that. There are families that tonight, when they sit down for dinner in Alabama or wherever they may be across the nation, there is going to be a chair where someone should be sitting, where they're not, because of fentanyl poisoning and because of the effects of this drug. And we saw this last year when a 2-year-old, a beautiful little 2-year-old, was found dead in Alabama with fentanyl in her system. And as I've traveled our state and our nation, I routinely hear these stories of heartbreak and tragedy that just are gut-wrenching. And when I was at the border last year, I went to San Diego, and a DEA officer was sitting there talking to us, and they told us the story of a mom who had 2 boys. She had 2. And they broke apart and shared a Percocet, and you'll know this story. And it was laced with fentanyl, and both of those boys died. As a parent, no one should ever go through that. No parent should have to deal with that heartbreak. And so as a mama, I am ready for us to do something now, not tomorrow, today. I think we owe it to the kids across this great nation. And so I just would like to say, I'd like to know from y'all's perspective, where are the gaps? We see technology changing. We see even what China's doing, bringing precursors, getting them to Mexico across our border. We now see them liquefying, fentanyl, all of the things. Where are the gaps? And I am almost out of time, so I'll just ask you, where are the gaps in our technology? What do we need to do more of? We'll just go down the line, and then I'll be out of time.
Give the ability for federal law enforcement to wiretap encrypted applications.
Thank you.
Yeah, we need those extra tools to map the organizations and hold them accountable.
And Mr. DeFord, do you have anything to add?
I just want to add to your sentiment that if the 109,000 people that died in America last year are people, they are humans. Every one of those signified a funeral, a eulogy, a mother, a father, sons, children, cousins, uncles, people just like the people in this room. I think it was really important for you to say that, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jelly Roll. Hi. I don't know if any of my colleagues, Mr. Chairman, do you have any ink? But I do, and I'm familiar with your work, and I'm actually a fan of the genre. An Eric Church guy, seen him in concert and everything. So, anyway, there's no reason you would know me and know my record. But before I became a senator, I was the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, and I was in charge of the pardons process here in my state. And I've made really important part of my platform is I believe in second chances. And I've signed off on thousands and thousands of pardons. And I believe that, I believe in redemption, and I've made that very critical. And I know you've been very clear about that redemption as well, too, and it has infused your work. And I'd like to talk about what do you believe that Americans that are living their best life now deserve a second chance, that they deserve redemption? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, I would be lying, Senator Fetterman, if I told you that it was just a second chance that I'm here for. God blessed me with a third and a fourth and a fifth. I gave God every reason not to give me another chance, and he did. And I thank God he did, because when he gave me a megaphone, I've made it a point to scream in it as often as possible with not only his praises, but with righting my wrongs. And that's a part of the reason I'm sitting here today. But you are actually one of the few politicians I was familiar with, because you dress like me. Which I think's awesome.
I never give advice on fashion.
Yeah.
No, but no, and I think your message about a second chance really reaches a lot of people that may not be open to that as part of that, and my opponent and the other side really weaponized my standing for a second chance and believing in redemption. And now I've been made I'm easy on crime, and I'm just like, lawless and every kinds of things. And that's just, of course, not the truth. And I believe two things can be true at the same time, that we must be very smart on crime, and we must have a secure border, and we need to do everything we can to eradicate the scourge of fentanyl. But I also believe that we must have a path for redemption and to be allowed to be made whole again, too, after they paid their due. And again, you're a tribute to that as well, too. On the other side of that, we cannot ever make our streets safer without the buy-in of the police. And I would just say this. There's a neighborhood in Philadelphia, in my state, Kensington. Kensington is essentially ground zero of fentanyl and the scourge of that. And you will often see that on Fox, and some accuse that of being trank porn and things like that, and I don't agree with that. I've been around Kensington. I've been on it. I've walked around it. It's real, and it's there. And I don't think we can effectively address our national tragedy if we're able to make that successful and make it safe. And we can't do that without the members, Mr. Yos, of your membership in Philadelphia as well. And I fundamentally also, I want to salute the new mayor, Mayor Parker in Philadelphia. She understands that we have to address the situation there in Kensington, and I would absolutely support that. And I also believe that we cannot demonize our police as well, and we need to make sure they're part of the solution as well, too, and I fully support that. And I just wanted to ask, because a lot of the politics that get involved in it, and my belief in a second chance has been weaponized, and many members of your membership believe that I'm lawless and I'm not anti-cop and I'm anti-law, and of course that's not the truth. Is it possible that two things can be true at the same time? That we need a strong, fully energized police department, and we also believe that believing in a second chance is actually, it's compatible.
Well, sir, I do agree. I do agree that I think, to some extent, what we're doing is we're modifying behavior to some extent. When illegal behavior, there's there's no question. People, one mistake doesn't mean you throw someone away. Obviously, they're part of society, and I guess the hard line is second, third, fourth, and how many people get hurt along the way. And that's the one that I think we'll all wrap our arms around on just how effective some of this is. You're right. I think you are correct. We need to, when we're all working together and recognizing a problem and finding solutions to those problems, we do find solutions to them. When we don't work together, we do not, and it's a disservice to the people we serve.
Now, Mr. Chairman, 30 seconds more.
Senator Fetterman.
Yeah, no, I believe that, especially in Kensington, and I absolutely support the new mayor's efforts on that. That solution, is we must have possible. It's possible with the police, And I think we also have to understand that we can't necessarily throw away addicts, and that we need to work together on that. And I think that's a base case on addressing our nation and this scourge. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both.
Senator Butler is Senator Butler is recognized from California.
Chairman, for the hearing, and our ranking member on such an incredibly important topic. Thank you all for being here. Representing the state of California, it was also important for me to be here and to be a part of sort of raising the voice and telling the story of 40 million Californians who have been managing the difficulties that this drug has brought to families, both urban and rural, American-born, and those who have immigrated to our great state. And so I want to appreciate all of you all for being here. You know, in California, fentanyl has been the cause of 77% of drug deaths amongst teenagers last year. And, you know, we have all talked about the statistics and how they show that overdoses involving fentanyl were behind 1 in 5 deaths of people aged 15 to 24. 1 in 5 deaths behind in those 15 to 24, I think, robbing our state and our country. Robbing our state and our country of our future. Mr. Jelly Roll, and I join all of my colleagues in just having celebrating your leadership, your voice, your willingness to offer your time, your talent, and your treasure to our country. I also, interestingly, join my colleagues in having listened to your music. And am grateful for the message of redemption as a California girl born in the state of Mississippi. There is nothing better than bringing together all of the genres of music that you bring and telling the story of not just your own journey in life, but your story of redemption and inviting your listeners into a relationship with God. And so I just so appreciate, you know, I also am a parent. And when I listen to the stories of Trinity, or the 2-year-old that has been mentioned by Senator Britt from Alabama, it is hard for me not to think of my own 9-year-old daughter and America's daughters and sons who are going to be faced with this challenge, as has been noted in California. What California did was to, I think, try to speak to some of the issue of education and intervention that you mentioned before. Governor Newsom enacted legislation known in California as Melanie's Law. It came after a deadly fentanyl overdose at Bernstein High School in Hollywood involving a 15-year-old named Melanie Ramos. The law mandates that every public school in California provide training to school employees on opioid prevention and life-saving response under a formal plan known as the Comprehensive School Safety Plan. As a parent, I wanted to just ask, and you know, Senator Daines talked a bit about the whole problem, and I appreciate you recognizing that and calling into the space that we are whole people, and this is a whole problem. I'd love to hear you expound a bit more based on your experience as an addict, as a dealer, and as someone willing to share your story, and as a parent. What more can we be doing, like Melanie's Law, but what more can we be doing to face the whole problem?
Thank you so much. That's an incredible question. I would start with a personal story that's probably more personal than my wife wants me to share, but we have a 15, almost a 16-year-old daughter, and like every 16-year-old, she has recently experimented with marijuana. Nothing to do with this committee, but for the intensive purposes of the story, I'm very pro-marijuana. But it petrified me because she was smoking cartridge pens, and I had heard a story of a cartridge pen having fentanyl in it, and I felt a fear as a father that I've never felt before in that moment. I'll also give you this as a testimony to how I do business personally. I take 10 buses on tour. We run a very big tour, and all 10 buses are required to have testing strips, Narcan, and defibrillators. I put them in all buses. We have sober buses, we have party buses. Even the sober bus gets them, because I know sometimes it could be the Trinity effect of one guy relapsed and took one pill and he wasn't ready for it. I think that the act, y'all, the Melanie Act, is one that should be across the country. I think that education is so important that these kids don't realize, like I said earlier, the era of when we were children and we could experiment with drugs is not safe for our children no more. There was a time in this country where you could experiment with drugs, and that time is not now. And I think that we have to continue to drive that home. I don't trust my daughter smoking tobacco, because if I didn't see it get popped out of the plastic, I don't trust it. And that's sad, because now we're living in fear. And nothing is worse for an American than to live in fear.
Thank you so much for that. Because you were willing to tell more than your wife wanted you to, but also because it leads me to my next question for Mr. Yost. In the interaction with law enforcement, look, I spent 18 years in the labor movement, and so often there are policy conversations held around our members' profession without the inclusion of the voice of workers at the center of implementing that policy. And so I appreciate your representation on behalf of your members and being a part of this. My question is very much connected to what Mr. DeFord just outlined. And at its core, the question is, are we doing enough to train and ensure the appropriate supplies for our law enforcement officers to do what they signed up to do, which is save the lives of American children? So often our children are dying by accidental ingestion of fentanyl. They're not seeking to take fentanyl. They are ingesting, counterfeit pills perceived to be something else. Do our officers have what they need? Are we speaking to, is there legislation that you would suggest to ensure, if we're not, or if that we should be doing more? Do our officers need those overdose kits that Mr. DeFord just spoke to? So
to answer your first question, are we doing enough? I think there's 110,000 people for last year, I'm not counting about this year, that say that we're not. Clearly, we're not even coming close. So there's work to be done. There's no law enforcement officer that wants to deal with any of this, much less go to a family and explain to them how some poison that's on the street that we were not able to prevent being there has taken the life of one of their loved ones. So there's a huge challenge here. There's two parts to it, and when we talked considerably about both of them, we're focused right now largely on the supply.
Thank you, Senator Butler.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Finish. Okay. She was way over. Okay.
The supply. The other side of this is too, and we've talked extensively about it. We need better education of this. There has to be. So on a rank and file officer's standpoint, we can take one part of this and not fix the problem. It has to be. It's going to have to be a holistic approach. And if we don't have a community aspect to this, if we don't have the empowerment of it, of a community being part of the solution, we're not going to fix it. You have the supply and you have the demand. We need to address it on both sides. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Senator Cortez Masto of Nevada is recognized.
Thank you. And thank you, all three of you, for being here, because I think it is important we talk about this holistic approach. From my past experience, and I was Attorney General of Nevada, working with HIDA and addressing, at the time, methamphetamines, and then we had opioids, and now we have fentanyl, and we'll get into that. 80% of the drugs that are consumed that come from Mexico are consumed because the demand is here in the United States. So it is demand along with the supply that we have to address. But here's what is important for me, and I think that's why what you guys are doing is key here. It is the relationship and partnership between law enforcement and our mental health and our substance abuse. It's the healthcare piece of it is key, just like the law enforcement is. And this is why, Mr. DeFord, I just so appreciate you being here. And you said this, that, and this is true for Nevada as well, that I don't think there's anybody that's not touched by this somehow or knows somebody that's been touched by fentanyl or substance abuse in general. And that's why it is important we continue to fund and support both sides of it. So for the benefit of everybody here, I want you to know at the end of 2022, Congress made one of the largest investments in mental health and substance abuse programs. Congress put more than $2 billion in additional money to mental health and substance abuse programs over the past 2 years, and $7.5 billion for substance abuse and mental health services. That was the largest we've ever seen Congress doing. Is it enough? No, but it's a start. Here's my hope, is that as we are talking about these issues, that if you have a challenge, whether it's your physical care, your mental health, or substance abuse, there's a provider that you can go to get help. And you have the funds to do it, and it's accessible, and there's no longer any stigma associated with it. Because it is an illness. It is a problem that we have to address in our communities, and we have to front end and help people. And that's what I'm hearing from all of you as well, is this partnership. But to address the drug trafficking side of it, I am concerned. I was just down at the border. I was down in Arizona. I was at both the Tucson, Nogales, and Lukeville. There is a challenge with the drugs coming across the border, including too much fentanyl. And right now, this administration has $14 billion that they want Congress to support to go through that border, to address not just the drug trafficking, other things that are happening at the border. And I am hopeful that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle recognize that this is important. But here's my question, and I appreciate Mr. Urban, your comments, because I heard very clearly what else we need to do with respect to law enforcement support, WeChat, wireless app. It takes too long. You and I both know from former law enforcement, the quicker you can get on it and follow the money, then you can stop the trafficking. And it is taking too long. We need laws. So I'm there, and I'm hoping my colleagues hear this as well, and I'm willing to work with them to address that. Mr. Yos, thank you for everything you do. Let me talk to you about our rural communities, frontier communities, and tribal communities. Because what I know in Nevada, as we address this in some of our major urban areas, there's law enforcement. They're tackling it. They're working with HIDA. They're working with partnerships at the federal, state, and local level. But our rural communities and our tribal communities are challenged, and a lot of these cartels are taking advantage of that in the trafficking. So what else should we be doing? I have a piece of legislation that's called the Invest to Protect Act to give our smaller law enforcement communities the tools that they need for training, for hiring, for working. But people don't realize you can't send undercover into a small community. Everybody knows one another. They're going to know who the undercover is or how they're. So can you talk a little bit about that, the needs to address this in some of our rural communities as well?
Well, I think we have this belief that a rural community has less problems, but in reality, that rural community is actually a global community as part of a social network, a social media network, platforms, and that's where a lot of these drugs are being acquired for. So regardless of whether you think you're in a big city or a small town, you still have the same accessibility. It's still affecting people the same. And I think there's a certain responsibility I think the social media platforms have with this as well. They are providing a vehicle to be able to bring this to communities. What local communities need is they need to recognize that there's no one immune to it. No one, regardless of the size of your community. It's and need resources to be able to do it. I think a lot of it would be easy to suggest that maybe it's not a problem that exists here. It's a mindset. We need to recognize that those resources need to be across the board, regardless of the size of the community.
Thank you. And Mr. Urban, can you talk a little bit about the Mexican cartels? Are they taking advantage of the lack of law enforcement and the geographic challenges in some of the states? When it comes to peddling and trafficking in frontier communities or rural communities as well?
Absolutely. The Mexican cartels have infiltrated almost every community in the country. They're taking advantage of us in many different ways, whether it's cities, our transportation system, the ability to launder money through the financial networks here. It's going to take a team approach to go after the entire network of the Mexican cartels, and we'll also have to affect them within Mexico as well.
And so one final thing, and I thank the chairman because he talked about the support for one of the bills that I have is combating illicit xylazine act, which we now know this xylazine is being cut into this fentanyl, which is just as devastating, even more so. And this is a profit for these cartels. This is where they're making their money. This is a product. They're going to switch. Whatever product is selling at the time, they're going to switch whatever that product is for that demand. And we need to give the law enforcement the tools they need. One of the things I always get when I introduce legislation from some folks is, well, it's not working, so why do it? Why pass this legislation? The war on drugs is a failure, so why are we doing anything? What's your response to that?
The fentanyl deaths that we spoke about earlier, I would describe as those young teenagers being murdered We owe them justice. We owe their parents justice. As a federal agent, I'm frustrated by what's going on in the country right now. Everyone that's died from fentanyl overdose or poisoning, the Mexican cartels and anyone that's facilitated that trade needs to be brought to justice. And we want to talk about uniting as a country. We can all unite behind the justice that needs to be imposed on these nefarious actors. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cortez Masto, thank you. Thanks to the three of you for being here today and providing testimony. Senators who wish to submit questions, for the record, those questions are due 1 week from today, Tuesday, January 18th. So the three of you, the witnesses, the three of you, please respond within 45 days of our sending you the questions to respond to any of those. Thank you again. The hearing is adjourned.